Hi, everybody. Today's Friday, August 8th, 2025, and our friend Patrick Baab, German journalist, is back with us. Welcome back, Patrick.
Hello, Nima. Thank you very much for inviting me to the show.
Let's start, Patrick, with your country, Germany, and the policy of the German Chancellor Merz toward the conflict in Ukraine. Do you see any sort of sign that they're going to change their mindset toward Ukraine? We know that how the United States under the Trump administration is behaving is somehow confusing. But what is happening in Germany, in your opinion?
I don't see any sign to be optimistic. Firstly, I have to say I'm very sad about my own country. I never could imagine in the years before that I would have to live someday in a country that tries to wage a third war against Russia. We lost two wars against Russia in the crap for world power, the First World War and the Second World War. And I fear that Germany will be completely destroyed for the next 10 million years after the third war against Russia. Then for me, it is very clear that a nuclear power coming under pressure will use nuclear means. And the Russian missiles are focused on Central Europe, especially on Germany, because Germany is the platform for waging the war in Ukraine against Russia. The war in Ukraine is a war of the United States and its vessels against the Russian Federation on Ukraine's soil. And the goal of this war is to unbalance Russia and to implement a regime change in Russia. And I agree to the French historian Emmanuel Todd, who said recently in an interview with the Swiss Weltwoche, Friedrich Merz, the German chancellor, is a Russophobe warmonger. And that's a bad sign in a country that lost two wars and had so much responsibility for millions over millions death in the last century.
I think, Patrick, when we talk about Ukraine, we have to understand the complexity and the reality of the battlefield. And you look at the policies of Europe today. I'm not just talking about Germany, but together with the United Kingdom and France, these uh, important countries when it comes to the support that goes to Ukraine. Do you feel that do they have do because looking at Donald Trump and the way that he's talking about the conflict in Ukraine, somehow it shows that he doesn't receive or he doesn't care about the realities on the battleground. How is that going to play out for Europeans? Do they know what's going on there, or they're receiving the same sort of information that we're hearing from Donald Trump?
So I think most European politicians are not able to realize the complexity of this conflict. They lost reality completely. NATO lost the war in Ukraine. The war is lost. And European politicians don't want to accept that because their goal is to help themselves by subordinating under the will of the United States. And they cannot understand from this position of interest the complexity of the Ukraine war. I spoke of a war of 5 dimensions, 5 wars in one. The first is the local dimension. After the coup of Maidan in February 2014, between the Federalists and the ultra nationalists and fascists of the western part of the country of Galicia. Then we have the regional level, a war between four states. The Ukraine, run by the coup government in Kiev against the two separatist republics, Lugansk and Donetsk, and the Russian Federation, that backed those separatist republics economically, militarily a bit, and without own troops of their own, and politically. Then we have a geostrategic level, the war between NATO and the leader of a unipolar world model, the United States, against the Russian Federation, backed by China and partly India. And we have a worldwide economic war against Russia and the BRICS states, not only against Russia, and not only by implementing sanctions. It is a fight against the lowering of the profit rate, which we can see in all Western countries. The profit rate is dropping down. And now, after the theories of Karl Marx, we can say we can lift up the profit rate again by finding and exploring new markets, cheaper minerals, realigning of the production streets, a cheaper workforce, and all that. And all these points, you can find all these points in Ukraine. And there is one point to lift up the profits of the companies, especially of the military industrial complex and the financial industry. That is to wage a war, to start a war. And then so the capital will, at a gross level, being destroyed, and then the new accumulation can begin. And the fifth war is a war of the leaders of the Western world against their own people. They want to lift up the exploitation rate, and they want to destroy democracy to save themselves in their leading position. That's a point. George Orwell wrote that in his book 1984, and well, it was a dystopian utopia. It was great, and he writes, every war is a war against the people in the warmongers' countries, and I think that's completely right.
I think what's happening to Germany, Patrick, is tragic. I was in Germany and 10 years, 12 years ago, and it's so sad to see what's going on in Germany. And I simply don't understand why does Germany need to go after militarization to, I don't know, invest more in the defense budget and bring a lot of weapons to Germany, while the great success of Germany is getting away from it, and the the industry of Germany, the car production, all of these important points in the German economy are somehow disappearing from the scene, from the main concerns, main strategic concerns of Germany. How do you see the German people? Do they really concern about it? Are they really concerned of what's going on in Germany?
So I can remember a sentence of Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. He said once, revolutions can take place when the leading class cannot go on and the suppressed classes, the working class, don't want to go on. And today in Germany, we are in a position that The leading elite is at its end. They led the country in a dead-end street. But people of Germany want to go on. They still want to go on. There is no consciousness about the deep crisis of the situation. The deindustrialization is running. We are losing jobs, a lot of jobs. A lot of companies are closing. A lot of companies are leaving the country in the direction to the United States or to China or Asia or Hungary. And the people don't want to realize that. It's a kind of blocked conflict. Because looking back in Germany, so much things worked very well. And today, the majority of the German people cannot realize and cannot understand and don't want to believe that the country cannot go on this way any longer. And this is the situation the warmongers and the government brought us in. But it is difficult today. On the one hand, we have, well, such a great pressure of propaganda and propaganda media. All my former colleagues, most of my former colleagues are writing and talking and publishing against Russia and for a new war. And they are driving the politicians in front of them. The second point is the ownership of the press. Well, the press in Germany is like in Brazil or in other countries, it's private owned. And these private owners are linked to the industry and they want war. They want war to make money. The political class of Germany is completely transatlantically corrupted. So that means many politicians of Germany today, many members of the political elite, managed their careers via transatlantic organizations like the German Marshall Fund, Young Global Leaders, the Bilderberg conferences, or other transatlantic foundations and organizations. So they cannot imagine to have a career outside the help of the United States. So this is something I mean with transatlantically corrupted. And well, for the majority of the German people, we see a blocked conflict. And this is partly a result of digitalization. Digitalization means that people will be interested in the use of digital offers by non-paid offers. They don't have to pay for these offers, for the information given by the internet. But on the other hand, they are exploited as employees and they are brought into a political alignment with the government by the way the internet sources are informing the people. To get a real impression from the situation in the Donbass, for example, you have to be on the ground. You have to talk to people over there. That's the point. That's the main point. All we see in the German press, what we can read, what we can see in TV, what we can find in the internet, is mostly wrong information. It is propaganda, nothing else. And that's the problem. So the first step for Germans would be to check the personal information sources and to change the information sources to come closer to the new media, to the alternative media, and not to the the mainstream media. The mainstream media are presenter of NATO propaganda, nothing else. And people cannot make, they must be clear in their brain that the internet is not a good information source. You have to be on the ground and to talk to people. You must have sources of the first level and not of the second level. That's an important point. And on the psychologic level, Germans have a guilt complex, not against the Russians, but against the Jews. And this is completely right. We killed millions of Jews, but we also killed millions of Russians. And this is not clear in German public. So, and the invasion of the Russian army into Ukraine in order to help the two separatist republics in 2022 brought many Germans into a position of exculpation, because now it was easy to say the Russians are guilty and responsible, not we Germans. And this is a kind of psychological easing for Germans. And that makes the propaganda so easy to come into the brains and the hearts of Germans. And today I see a situation that the majority of the German people don't want to understand that this conflict has a long history. But this is the first step to find a peace solution. So we are far away from peace. I agree to the American analyst Martin Armstrong, who expected a invasion of NATO in Ukraine in the next year with 250,000 soldiers. And I expect a provocation case against Russia in the Baltic Sea during the winter half year. And well, I'm reckoning with a great European war because the ruling elites want war. And the German people don't want to stand up to the ruling elites.
You mentioned Martin Armstrong. He was on this podcast. We talk about the same issue that you've mentioned. But when it comes to the realities on the ground, Patrick, Donald Trump tweeted 2 days ago that since January this year, Russian part lose the casualties on the part of Russians were 112,000 soldiers, while the Ukrainian side lost something like 8,000 soldiers. Is that the case in the mind of the people in Europe? In the mind of I would say in the mind of the European leaders, or what is your take on the realities on the ground in Ukraine?
I was on the ground several times, and I talked to Ukraine soldiers who changed the side of the conflict and are now fighting for Russia as part of the Russian army. And those soldiers told me that the casualties of the Ukraine side are huge. And the reason is simple to understand for that. The Russians have so much more missiles, so much more artillery, and in the meantime, so much more drones. And this is a war of complete surveillance of the war theater by satellite, by drones. And it is a war of artillery, of missiles, and of drones. And, well, the official numbers of casualties are top secret on both sides. But there are non-government organizations on both sides that are counting the graves and This is, I think, an exact sign. And the second exact sign is the exchange of war prisoners. And the Russian side made so much more war prisoners in a range of 10 to 1, at least 10 to 1, sometimes 20 to 1. That means the Russian side has not so much casualties and losses as the Ukrainian side has. According to the CIA, we can count 1.4 million deaths on both sides, including both sides. And I think we see more than 1 million killed soldiers on the Ukraine side, and I estimate 150,000 up to 200,000 death soldiers on the Russian side.
And is that, do you think that the Europeans and European leader care about it? What's going on?
No, the former Mexican president Obrador said, "We are delivering the weapons, you are delivering the bodies." And that's cynical. And I agree to that. And well, many people in the West, US senators, or the publisher of the British Economist, said very open, Ukraine people is dying for the interest of the West. And that means that we are treating Ukraine people as a kind of subhumans. And this is racism. Nothing else. It's racism. Because our position is let them die. It's better the Ukrainian people, the Ukrainian soldiers are dying than our soldiers. And they said it openly. They said it openly. And this is racism. And in Germany, this is a crime. So all these warmongers in politics and at the editorial boards in Germany must go to prison, from my point of view. They must sentenced and they must go to prison.
How do you see the interactions between Europe and the Trump administration? Many believe that Trump wants to do something in Ukraine, but Europeans are pushing so much for the continuation of the conflict. That's why the United States was not able so far to make any sort of change in Ukraine. But the other part would be, if Donald Trump is that much powerful, he could have done it in spite of having these Europeans going against him. How do you see it? What is the dynamic between the two parties, Europe and the United States, and the way they're communicating to each other towards the conflict in Ukraine?
I think the dynamic between the two parties is a team play with different roles. From my point of view, the transatlantic split is a myth, nothing else. I think Washington managed, the Trump administration managed to Europeanize this war. In spring 2022, a secret file of the Rand Corporation was published. And this was a file addressed to the CIA, the White House, the administration, and the experts of Rand wrote, to help American economy, we can see only one way. We must Europe and especially Germany force to invest in the United States and to transfer economic and production facilities back to the United States. And the only way to do is to cut Germany away from the cheap Russian energy supplies. And the only way to do that is to bring Germany into a position to support a war in Ukraine. And from this point of view, for Washington, everything works perfect. And now the Germans are in a position that they have to invest in the United States. See the last deal between Ursula von der Leyen and Donald Trump. They have to invest, they promise to invest millions and millions in the United States, to buy weapons in the United States, and to give up production facilities to the United States. And this is exactly what the Rand Corporation wrote. And this is managed by transatlantically corrupted elites in Europe and especially in Germany. Let's take our Chancellor Friedrich Merz. He's just a former employee of BlackRock. And he's the representative of the financial industry of the United States and the military industrial complex of the United States in Germany as a leader. And he makes Germany a vassal of the United States with high risk. Or take the vice chancellor of Germany from the Social Democratic Party, Lars Klingbeil. He made an internship at the foundation of the SPD, the Friedrich Ebert Foundation in Washington, and he made internships over there at American NGOs and American members of parliament, members of Congress, who were linked to the CIA. He is a further man of the United States in Germany as vice chancellor. Those people cannot represent the interest of German people. It's impossible. And the reason for that is, it's long ago. In the year 2003, the former Chancellor Gerhard Schröder, French President Jacques Chirac, and the Russian President Vladimir Putin refused to join the illegal attack of the United States and some other states against Iraq. And this was a warning sign in Washington. Something like that should never ever happen again. And so they tried to bring our academic elites on a transatlantic way of thinking. And that works in our universities, in the churches, in the schools, in the so-called non-government organizations who are mostly run or organized by the state, and in the state administration itself. We have a lot of people who made their careers in cooperation with transatlantic organizations. And today we have these transatlantic elites. We don't have a German elite. And the second point is the reforms under Chancellor Schröder in the year 2002. According to these reforms, when German lenders sold their industrial shares, it was tax-free, completely tax-free. And the result was German banks sold their industrial shares and financed structured papers and made, well, games at the stock exchange. That brought Germany deeper into the financial crisis and opened the possibility for American hedge funds and financial investors to buy industrial shares in Germany. Today we see a situation that not a single company in well, the important companies on stock exchange in Frankfurt. Not a single company is without American influence. They have influence on any company. That means our economy is not owned by Germans. It is owned by the United States. And so they can influence the whole process, the production process. And well, we need a complete reform of that. That's the point. And we are sold out. We are a country completely sold out to the United States, a country of slaves, not only of vessels, of slaves. Because Washington managed to bring us into a position of a front state in the Ukraine war. Everything what is done at the front lines, the missiles, the artillery, is managed by American soldiers in Germany's city of Wiesbaden. Everything. And so we are in the focus of Russian nuclear missiles because of that. And that was managed by the United States with the help of German politicians. So they sold out their own countries, and we are slaves of the United States in this war. That's the point.
I think the escalations before the meeting, we had a meeting between Steve Witkoff and Vladimir Putin, but before this meeting happening, we had Donald Trump announcing that he's sending nuclear submarines close to Russia and sending nukes again after years, after 1980s, they withdrew the nukes from Europe and they're sending them back to Europe. I think when it comes to this sort of activity, these sort of positions on the part of the United States and the way that they're trying to intimidate Russia to put pressure on Russia, but after all, they're talking about nukes, they're talking about nuclear weapons. The use of these weapons can destroy Europe.
Yes.
Can I don't know if anybody in Europe cares about the gravity of what's going on, because you talk about, you remember the attack on Russian nuclear bombers. They attack Russian nuclear bombers. If it wasn't, I assume that Russia was so patient to react to that sort of activity on Russian soil. But if things escalate and the way that it is that happening right now, I don't see I don't see Europe in the whole situation, in the whole picture. I don't see Europe arguing that we are in the vicinity, we are here in the neighborhood, and any sort of war, nuclear war, could destroy all of Europe.
Yes, I agree. Europe, especially Germany, is run not by responsible politicians, but by gamblers. And it is very impressive that those gamblers have a kind of apocalyptic blindness. They cannot see the responsibility they have, and that cannot oversee the outcome of their decisions. So, concerning the submarines, the missiles aboard of these submarines have a range of 15,000 kilometers. It doesn't matter where they are. They will hit the country, the enemy country. From my point of view, it is a sign of frustration in the Trump administration. Trump shows the behavior and the negotiation tactic of a New York real estate broker, threatening the other side and hoping the other side will react. And this does not work with the Kremlin, because the Kremlin plans absolutely rational, and there is no trust between both sides. That means when there is no trust, you cannot negotiate. It's impossible, because every negotiation relies upon the trust between the bosses on the table. We had that situation between the young John F. Kennedy as the President of the United States and the old man Khrushchev on the other side during the Cuban crisis. In the negotiation process, they found a way of trusting each other. And now this trust is completely destroyed because the Russian side says we were betrayed several times. We were betrayed with the Maidan coup. We were betrayed with the Minsk process. We were betrayed with the peace negotiations in Istanbul by Boris Johnson. We were betrayed, so we cannot trust. We can trust in our submarines, in our nuclear forces, and we can trust in the 700,000 soldiers on Ukraine soil we have. That's the point. And Putin will stay at his demands. The first demand is Ukraine must stay neutral. A NATO membership for Ukraine is for the Kremlin not acceptable, and for the Russian people not acceptable. Absolutely not. Putin is backed by the majority of the Russian people. The second point is the West has to accept the realities on the ground. That means the four conquered oblasts will be part of the Russian Federation. And the team leader of the Russian delegation in Istanbul recently said to the Ukraine side, okay, we separate right now. Next time, we don't talk about four oblasts. We
You
will
mean
talk about,
Medinsky? Yeah.
yes, we will talk about eight oblasts. And this is, well, what will happen? So the Russian troops make progress, and Putin is not in a hurry for negotiations because of this progress. And the third demand of Moscow is we want a regime change in Kiev. We don't accept the government of Zelensky. We won't negotiate with Zelensky. And at the point after the talks Witkoff had recently in the Kremlin, it is very clear that the Western side don't want to discuss the point the Ukraine must stay out of NATO, a neutral Ukraine. And this is the main demand of the Russian side. The Russian side want to meet a new geopolitical order on European soil, a new peace order, a new geostrategical and an order of power, a new order of power. And this is something the West don't want. The West makes show offers during a negotiation process, and at the same time, he tries to hold Russia under pressure. The long-term goal of NATO is to unbalance Russia, to destroy Russia and to create several small states, and to implement a regime change in Russia. And this is something, it's in the interest of the United States, because the United States have accepted a multipolar world, but they want to be the strongest player in this multipolar world. And so they want to have the biggest claim in this world. And the goal is to Europeanize the Ukraine war and then to make a U-turn to the biggest enemy, and that's China. And so the other problems, leave it to the Europes. They can do their war on their own cost. And we are making the big game with China. That's the position of Trump. And our European leaders are destroying their own countries in following the United States. That's the point.
You mentioned what Russia think about the way that Russia thinks about the conflict in Ukraine and any settlement that could, the realities in the mind of Russians. But do you know what Europe wants? What is the main points that Europe wants to make in any sort of settlement in Ukraine?
So the strongest state in Europe is Germany, and one of the biggest states. And we are in a difficult situation. We are in an economic decline, and our production facilities will more and more go to China and to the United States. That's in the interest of China and in the interest of the United States, but not in our own interest. So for our leaders, the solution is to invest in the military-industrial complex as the only possible solution. And in this difficult situation, they are losing the war in Ukraine, and they are under pressure of the United States and the Trump administration. They are searching a way in the middle of between. And this is an investment in the military-industrial complex, in the hope we can, as Europeans, someday conquer a big part of Ukraine to get the Ukraine minerals, the Ukraine gas reserves and oil reserves, the black earth, to make our farm investments better, our food industry better. And this is a small hope, and this leads us to a new war in Europe. So, but there is no resistance of the people of Germany. They are sleeping into the next war. They don't want to believe that that we are led in a wrong way. They elected Friedrich Merz. I didn't, but many people elected Friedrich Merz. So they have to live with Friedrich Merz. And those people who don't want to demonstrate and to protest against the warmongers will die in the wars to come. Because responsible for all the casualties are not only the decision-making politicians. Responsible for all the casualties are those who didn't want to stop these politicians. And that's the situation in Germany. A country is going in a third world war, in a third war on European soil. And it will find a bad end, from my point of view.
I think what's going on in Ukraine is an alarm for the European countries, because they have to decide what do they want to be in the future. Because you look at Ukraine, as you mentioned, the situation is not that good for European.
Yes.
And they have invested a lot. They have sent a lot of weapons, invested. They sent their money, their taxpayers' money to Ukraine. They couldn't achieve anything so far. And the United States, I don't know, how did you find a meeting between Steve Witkoff and Vladimir Putin? If we assume something happens, what's so amazing to me? If they get something in Ukraine, Europe gonna lose. If they continue the conflict, Europe gonna lose, especially Germany. And I would argue if they reach an agreement, they will lose, but lose less than with the concept of the continuation of the conflict. You know, what do they want to be? What is the future for Europe? Do they want to be the same thing against China? This is a huge decision on the part of Europeans. They have to decide about these big issues going forward.
Those politicians are ready to destroy their own countries to be pleased by the United States, because their careers depend on the United States. And without the United States and the support of their friends in Washington, they are nothing. And So what we need in Germany and in the Europe and in Europe as a whole is an exchange of our elites. So no single politician of the ruling party cartel in Germany is in a position to stop this war. They all are transatlantically corrupted, completely. So the voters must send those politicians, the complete ruling party cartel, into the garbage can of history. But I don't see that this will work. On the other hand, we have, as the single opposition party, the AfD, Alternative for Germany. And this party has partly more than 20% of the voters. And in the end of the show, the Americans will try to transform the AfD into a transatlantic party. And then the show will go on. And the Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht in Germany the lefties, did not manage to present themselves as a peace party because they joined coalitions on a regional level with warmonger parties, with the SPD and with the CDU. And what's that? So the Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht destroyed itself. And now we have no opposition. Germany today is a country without opposition and a sleeping majority. And the dissidents like me, are really under pressure in public, really under pressure. That's the situation in Germany today. And I see no way out at the moment. But aboard a ship, everybody's complaining about everything. When the sailors are completely quiet, then uprising is in the air. And that's my only hope. Probably uprising is in the air. But when, where, how? I don't know. So for my own country, I don't have any hope.
Patrick, you mentioned AfD and Alternative for Germany, for Deutschland. Do you feel that we're going to see, if they get, somehow they manage to get a power in Germany, are they going to be the same way that we have been witnessing with the case of Meloni in Italy, or you see the same thing happening in Germany, or you see something different coming to power in Germany?
I said I don't see any solution for the German political and party system.
I
We have
wanted
two.
you to compare the AfD and their proposal, their sort of mindset, to what's going on in Italy with Meloni, because Meloni, it was so much, everybody was talking when she was going to come to power and being elected. Everybody was talking, "Ah, she's gonna change it. She's gonna go against the 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 the, the, the United States foreign policy in Ukraine and all." Nothing happened.
Yeah.
Nothing happened. Is that the case with AfD, in your opinion?
Yes, I think so. Miss Meloni made her first visit in Washington, and she came back as another person. And I think if the AfD will not be forbidden in Germany, which is a real possibility, and the AfD will get into a position to form a coalition with the Christian Democrats and will bring somebody in a position as foreign minister, he will make, or she will make, his first visit in Washington and will come back as another person, and the show will go on. So the AfD, from my point of view, is not a fascist party. It is a neoliberal party, a right-wing party, yes, a neoliberal party. It is a party who wants peace with Russia, but the AfD want to boost military expenses. They wanted to boost that at the level of 5% of the national gross product. And now we have that situation. It is not a peace party. It could have been a partner in finding a way to peace with Russia, but this show is over for me. It's too late. We lost the momentum. And, well, after voting for AfD in the next elections to come, will lead to a big political frustration by a lot of people, by a lot of voters. They will go on, as we see, with the Ukraine war, and they will go with the surrender under the interests of Washington. They will go on. That's all. And that's why I said Germany today is a country without an opposition. We had a peace demonstration right here in Berlin in this dangerous situation with, I think, let me say, 10,000 participants. We need 1 million participants. We are in danger as Germany, as the country as a whole. We are in danger. But where are these people? They are sleeping. They are sitting in front of their TVs and their computers. And this is not enough to bring back peace to Europe. If you want peace, you have to fight for peace. And I don't see those fighters. And, well, some intellectuals are trying to make peace books. I don't want to join that because I'm too negative to show a way to peace. But I can analyze the situation. And the situation in Europe is very dangerous. And I think NATO will start a war against Russia. They want war. And the first victim of this new Third World War is Ukraine and the Ukraine people. I'm very sorry of the Ukraine people because I have friends over there. And some friends of mine are lost in action, probably killed in action. And the next victim will be the German people. But people don't want to see that. Especially the younger people don't want to see that. I'm an old man. I would die through some bombs, but the younger ones will die at the front line of the upcoming war. And if there will be future generations, we both, Nima and me, we will be seen as the generation who witnessed the beginning of the Third World War. And hopefully we will not be seen as those people who didn't manage to avoid the Third World War. So we are responsible. That's our task, to avoid a Third World War against a majority of warmongers and idiots, political idiots.
I think the signs is because after the meeting between Steve Witkoff and Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump came out and said everything's fine and we are doing some sort of progress. But looking at the way that the establishment in the United States has invested in Ukraine together with Europeans, as you mentioned, I don't see any sort of sign that that could bring some sort of sanity to what's going on in Ukraine. Even if they manage something in Ukraine, some sort of agreement, that is not the end of the conflict.
Yes.
They want to continue it. Do you see that sign?
I think the Trump administration is struggling on domestic ground against two enemies. The first enemy is the administration as a whole. And most employees of the US administration are neocons. They want to have their war on Ukraine soil. And they want unbalanced Russia at every price. And when the price is the destruction of Europe, so what? It's not America. They want war. And Mr. Trump is under pressure to lose the majority in both chambers of parliament. In his own party, in the Republican Party, because you have a lot of warmongers in the Republican Party. So he's under double pressure, under the pressure of the administration that is neocon influenced, and under pressure of his own party, which is also very neocon. And he has to satisfy his own party first, because he's in a situation he could lose the majority in the parliament. That's a problem for him. And so I think the possible meeting between Mr. Putin and Mr. Trump will be just a show. A show. Putin don't want to refuse such a meeting, but he will stay with his demands. I explained that. And on the other hand, Mr. Trump will force Mr. Putin to agree to a ceasefire, an unconditional ceasefire in Ukraine, which the Kremlin will not do at any price. They won't do that, because the only interest in a ceasefire is to rearm Ukraine and to start a new game on Ukraine's soil. So, and then Mr. Trump will go home and say, okay, we cannot talk to Putin, we cannot negotiate with him. We have to increase pressure, more sanctions, and he will allow and support a European military engagement in Ukraine. So that's, from my point of view, the result. I don't expect too much from these talks between Trump and Putin. So it's an open situation, but there is no trust between these guys, no trust. And the first step is to create a bit trust. And this is a long process, and you have to go step by step. And Mr. Trump has 3 more years. It's not time enough.
Yeah, you know what's so strange, Patrick, about the meeting between the two presidents? I see every meeting as a good sign, but you have to have the technical teams talking to each other, then making some sort of agreement before these sort of meetings between the two presidents happen. You know, that is not the case in Ukraine.
Yes.
They haven't
Yeah.
reached any sort of agreement. They don't know what the other, the, the United States has decided to leave the scene and they didn't negotiate with Russia. It's Zelensky and his administration that they're negotiating, talking with Russian side, and they're talking about the exchanging the prisoners, the corpses, all of these things. Nothing of the importance of what's going on in Ukraine has been agreed on so far between the two parties, and I don't know what can we supposed to expect from the meeting between the two presidents. Nothing.
Yes.
I
The only solution, we in the Ukraine war, we are in a dead end street, and the only solution is war. Normally, the teams of both sides are working for weeks and months, day and night, to find a common solution, to find an agreement, and then the presidents will meet and they make, well, some changement at the whole thing, but the papers, the files are ready, and after 6 hours or 7 hours, they will go to the press and they will say, we have a proper deal, and now the photographs can come, the cameras can come and film that, and they will, well, in the interview say the same thing. It's good for our countries. We found a peace deal. It's very good for America, and it is very good for Russia. And I found a new friend in the American president, and I found a new friend in the Russian president, and now we are friends and all that shit. But it doesn't happen this way. So no team meeting, nothing. And well, we are in a situation that the Kremlin is working very smart, very rational, and very professional on this question, Ukraine war. They know exactly what they want. And the American side is, I have to say that, very unprofessional. And this is dangerous. Then a professional can avoid mistakes, and a non-professional don't see his own mistakes while making. And that's the difficult situation. It's a dangerous situation. We are running into a war because we are led by unprofessionals. And in Europe as a whole, we have the same scene, unprofessionals. It's a laugh. Starmer, he lost majority. He lost his credibility in his own people completely. Macron, it's a laugh in Paris. Listen to people. They are laughing about him. And Chancellor Merz says in front of the cameras, the Israeli army is doing the dirty work for us. Well, it is an illegal war in Gaza.
Sad. It's so
And
sad.
that's, well, people in South America, in Africa, in Asia, they will never forgive what the West did in Gaza and in Ukraine. They will never forgive, and it will not be forgotten. So we are morally completely corrupted with these leaders, and they have to go to the garbage can of history. But, well, the majority of voters voted for them. That's the situation in Germany, and, well, I'm very unhappy about that. It's a very sad situation.
Patrick, before wrapping up this session, you mentioned the case of Gaza. Do you see Europe changing? Because they're talking about the recognition of a Palestinian state. What does that mean? What does that mean for the Europe's policy in the Middle East? After all, it seems that they try to show somehow they have different ideas, different opinion on what's going on in Gaza, considering the view of Washington. But do you see any sort of difference in their position,
It's
considering
just,
what it?
well,
Yeah.
I think this is just public relation. There is no Palestinian state. What does that mean to recognize a Palestinian state? We have so many United Nations resolutions. Nothing happened on the ground. What we see on the ground is a genocide in Gaza and settler colonialism in the West Bank. That is what we see. They want to press out the Palestinians, and we are running in the Middle East in an endless new war. They tried to destroy Iran with this illegal attack. And the backfire of Iran was so strong that they had to stop the attack. What does that mean? That means the West cannot get through with its politics in the Middle East. And there was a warning from Islamabad, from Pakistan. They warned when Israel is using nuclear weapons against Iran, we will use nuclear weapons against Israel. That was a clear warning. And so they stopped this show. But tomorrow is another day. They will try again because The United States see Israel as the sheriff of the United States in the Middle East in this role. And the Europeans don't play a separate role. They are aligning with the interests of the United States. Look at the German government. They are part of a illegal war of Israel against Gaza by shipping weapons and all that political support. And now genocide, it is a crime that can be prosecuted in any country. Imagine a situation, an official of the German Foreign Office, the German Foreign Ministry, is making with his family a journey to South Africa or Brazil. This official of the German Foreign Office can be detained and imprisoned and sent to court. And there is a very big rumor in the Foreign Office because the officials on the second and third level are full of fear. They can be detained in any country of this world, so they have to stay at home. And so our government is completely in a dependence of the United States and goes on with this policy because we have no public pressure against the warmongers. That is also the case in the Gaza war. There's no public pressure. And what we need is public pressure. It's the only way, because the ruling party cartel is, from my point of view, completely degenerated. We have a political class who cannot manage the tasks they have to manage. They are not able to do that. They cannot feel their responsibility. They can fill up their pockets, nothing more. So we need a new political class. We need an exchange of elites in Germany and in Europe as a whole. But at the moment, I don't see the alternative.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Patrick, for
I'm
being with
sorry, I
us.
cannot give any hope.
Yeah, it's not hopeful, the situation. Yeah, you have to stay with the reality of what's going on.
Yeah, that's clear.
Yeah. Thank you
Thanks very
so much.
much. It was a great pleasure to speak with you.
My
Hope we
pleasure.
can repeat the
Yeah.
conversation. It was a great pleasure.
Yeah. See you soon, Patrick.
See you soon. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.